Donald Trump today announced his intention to impose a 200% tariff on imports from John Deere. In June, John Deere had disclosed plans to move certain production lines to Mexico, a decision vehemently opposed by Trump. He warned that implementing this move would lead to significant tariffs on all goods John Deere seeks to sell in the United States. This development has sparked widespread reactions in Washington and financial markets, seen initially as a strategic expansion, but now embroiled in broader debates over trade policy, political allegiance, and labor's future. John Deere's decision to expand operations in Mexico, with a new manufacturing facility set to begin operations by 2026, has drawn sharp criticism from Trump, who labeled it a betrayal during a televised address. He threatened to impose a hefty 200% tariff on all John Deere products manufactured outside the U.S., emphasizing the potential political consequences for relocating jobs overseas. This move has triggered intense media coverage, investor uncertainty, and concern among rural Americans caught between their loyalty to Trump and their reliance on John Deere's products. Behind closed doors, John Deere's board debated the relocation decision extensively, citing rising manufacturing costs, supply chain disruptions, and competitive pressures from international rivals like Kubota and Mahindra. Mexico, with its lower labor costs and strategic access to growing agricultural markets in Latin America, offered a compelling solution despite domestic operational challenges in the U.S. The company viewed this move as essential for competitiveness and survival in a rapidly evolving global market, particularly in serving small to mid-sized farms seeking cost-effective and technologically advanced equipment. Speaking at a rally in Iowa, he thundered from the podium, "John Deere just spit in the face of American workers. They want to build our machines somewhere else, fine, but they won't bring them back here without paying dearly." It was classic red meat for his political base. But it was also more than that. It was a direct warning to John Deere, to other manufacturers, and to Wall Street. Cross this line, and there will be political consequences. John Deere, however, didn't flinch. There was no apology, no reversal. Instead, the company released a calm but firm statement. The Mexico expansion would impact less than 5% of North American output. The majority of Deere's core products, large tractors, combines, harvesters, would still be built in Iowa, Illinois, and other U.S. plants. This wasn't abandonment, they insisted, it was global optimization. Then came Wall Street's reaction. After an initial dip, Deere's stock recovered quickly. Analysts at Bloomberg and Goldman Sachs even praised the move as smart, forward-looking, and essential. The reasoning was hard to argue with. Farming demand was growing fastest in Latin America, and manufacturing needed to follow. Tariffs might sting in the short term, but they wouldn't derail a long-term global strategy. Ironically, some insiders think Trump's threats might even work in Deere's favor. If tariffs are applied across the board to all foreign-made agricultural equipment, competitors like Mahindra, Yanmar, and Kubota, who manufacture mostly outside the U.S., could be hit harder than Deere, which still makes most of its machines domestically. But none of that mattered in the realm of public opinion. In rural America, especially in key swing states, voters were divided. Social media groups and talk radio lit up with debate. Some defended Deere as a company adapting to global realities. Others saw betrayal, a company turning its back on American workers. The battle lines were drawn, and Trump's allies in Congress began to rally to his side. Senators from deep red states issued stern warnings, urging John Deere to rethink its strategy. The House Agriculture Committee called for hearings, and the White House floated the possibility of reviewing federal contracts to block taxpayer dollars from supporting Deere imports. Behind the scenes, Deere's lobbying machine kicked into high gear. Company representatives met with trade officials and briefed congressional staff, emphasizing that Deere isn't just a corporate name, it's a pillar of American agriculture. They argued that penalizing Deere would ultimately hurt the very farmers tariffs claim to protect, as rural infrastructure depends on their equipment. Yet Trump doubled down. At a rally in Ohio, he reiterated his threat, calling out Deere by name 5 times and promising tariffs so severe they would never forget. The crowd roared its approval. But Deere wasn't isolated. Corporations across the country were watching closely. If Deere gave in, it would send a chilling message that global business operations could be derailed by political pressure. If Deere held its ground, it might establish a new standard, that data-driven decisions could still prevail over campaign threats. And so far, Deere is standing firm. At the same time, the company isn't just focused on where it manufactures, but what it manufactures. The future of farming isn't defined by borders or party colors. It's electric, autonomous, and data-driven. Deere is investing heavily in this future, with autonomous tractors already working fields across the U.S., guided not by drivers, but by software. AI systems now manage entire farms through tablets. Drones scan crops for pests. Sprayers deliver. chemicals with pinpoint precision. Data flows constantly. And here's the key. These machines don't care where they're made. What matters is how fast, how efficiently, and how intelligently they operate. Which brings us back to the narrative Trump keeps pushing, the idea that manufacturing jobs can be brought back through tariffs and threats. It's a compelling soundbite, a reliable applause line. But in the reality of modern manufacturing and global agriculture, it's a myth that no longer holds up. Even if John Deere brought every factory back to Iowa tomorrow, it wouldn't revive thousands of blue-collar jobs. Those jobs no longer belong to people. They belong to machines. Automation isn't a political choice, it's a mathematical inevitability. According to Oxford Economics, as many as 20 million manufacturing jobs could vanish worldwide by 2030 due to robotics, and the pace is only picking up. Deere isn't sidestepping American workers, it's facing a future where the traditional concept of labor is disappearing altogether. Seen this way, Deere's move to Mexico isn't just about cutting costs. It's a reflection of a larger shift. The company is signaling that we're entering an era where location matters less than technology, where geography is being replaced by innovation. That's what makes this clash so telling. On one side, you have a populist politician vowing to bring back an America that no longer exists. On the other, a multinational company gearing up for a future that's already here. It's nostalgia versus progress, emotion versus strategy. And caught in the middle is the American farmer, left to decide who really has their back. So where do we go from here? That depends on the voters. Will they punish Deere for making a strategic decision to stay competitive, or punish Trump for threatening the tools that keep U.S. agriculture alive? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this battle isn't just about trade policy, it's about the direction we're heading as a nation. If you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Stay informed, stay sharp, and remember, the machines are coming. But the politics? They're already here. John Deere is not shutting down all U.S. production, but it is relocating specific manufacturing lines to Mexico, a move that has ignited controversy and political backlash. The decision stems from multiple economic and strategic pressures. Manufacturing in the United States has become increasingly costly, with rising labor expenses, clogged supply chains, and logistical unpredictability. At the same time, global competitors like Kubota in Japan and Mahindra in India are producing equipment faster and cheaper across Asia. To stay competitive, Deere is shifting part of its production to Mexico, where labor costs are significantly lower, up to 70% less, and the workforce is skilled in industrial manufacturing. The country also offers logistical advantages, with proximity to fast-growing agricultural markets in Latin America, such as Brazil and Argentina. Beyond costs, the move reflects a deeper reality. Automation is rapidly transforming manufacturing. Even if Deere brought all its factories back to Iowa, most jobs wouldn't return to people. They'd go to machines. Automation is not political. It's inevitable. Deere is investing heavily in electric, smart, and autonomous agricultural technologies, including driverless tractors and AI-driven farm management systems. The company argues this move is not about abandoning American workers, but about optimizing operations in a global, tech-driven economy. However, former President Donald Trump has taken this personally, vowing to impose a 200% tariff on Deere imports and accusing the company of betraying U.S. workers. Despite the political threats, Deere is standing firm, clarifying that less than 5% of its North American production is affected and that major machinery will still be built in the U.S. The backlash highlights a broader struggle between economic modernization and political nostalgia. While Trump promises to restore a past where all jobs stayed in America, Deere is preparing for a future where geography matters less than efficiency, innovation, and adaptability. This conflict between populist politics and global strategy places not just Deere, but the entire future of American manufacturing under the spotlight. John Deere's decision to shift parts of its manufacturing operations from the United States to Mexico has triggered a national debate, not just about trade and jobs, but about the very future of American industry. While some critics, including former President Donald Trump, frame the move as a betrayal of American workers, the company's decision is rooted in complex and rapidly shifting economic realities. Over the past decade, the cost of manufacturing in the United States has soared due to rising wages, increased regulatory burdens, erratic freight systems, and bottlenecks in supply chains. These pressures have made it harder for U.S.-based factories to compete in a global market where efficiency and affordability dictate survival. Meanwhile, international competitors like Mahindra, India, and Kubota, Japan, have mastered the art of lean, high-output production at lower costs, especially in emerging markets across Asia and Latin America. Faced with these mounting challenges, John Deere made a strategic, if politically risky, choice to relocate specific production lines to Mexico, where labor costs are about 70% lower. The workforce is experienced in industrial manufacturing, and the logistics network provides quick access to booming agricultural economies in countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia. These regions are seeing explosive growth in small to mid-sized farms, which require precisely the kind of compact, affordable machinery Deere plans to build at its new $55 million facility in Mexico. The move isn't just about payroll savings. It's about flexibility, speed, and strategic market positioning. Mexico offers proximity to fast-growing export markets and a more resilient supply chain architecture, something increasingly valuable in a world where raw material shortages and freight delays can derail production for months. But there's a deeper transformation unfolding beneath the surface. Deere isn't simply chasing cheaper labor. It's preparing for a world where labor itself is becoming less central to manufacturing. The future of agriculture and industrial production is being reshaped by automation, artificial intelligence, and smart technologies. Deere is already deploying autonomous tractors, AI-powered crop management systems, precision spraying drones, and software platforms that allow farmers to manage entire fields from a tablet. These innovations don't care where machines are built, they care how efficiently they perform. In fact, even if Deere were to return all operations to the US, it's unlikely that the old factory jobs would come back. According to Oxford Economics, up to 20 million manufacturing jobs could disappear globally by 2030 due to automation. Deere's decision, then, is not just economic, it's evolutionary. It signals the rise of an industrial era, driven more by machines and algorithms than by location-based labor. Trump, however, has turned the move into a political flashpoint. At rallies, he accused Deere of spitting in the face of American workers and vowed to impose a 200% tariff on any Deere product made outside U.S. borders. It was a message designed to resonate with rural voters and swing states where Deere has long been a symbol of American farming strength. But Deere didn't blink. The company responded calmly, explaining that less than 5% of its North American output would be affected and that core product lines like large tractors and combines would continue to be made in Iowa, Illinois, and other U.S. facilities. Still, the controversy escalated. Lawmakers in red states issued warnings, congressional hearings were proposed, and discussions began about cutting Deere out of government contracts if it continued down this path. Behind the scenes, Deere's lobbying arm pushed back hard, reminding policymakers that the company remains a pillar of American agriculture and that punishing it could backfire on the very farmers who rely on its equipment. Ironically, some analysts argue that Trump's tariff threats might actually help Deere by disproportionately hurting its foreign-based competitors, who rely far more heavily on overseas production than Deere does. Wall Street seemed to agree. After a brief dip, Deere's stock recovered, with analysts praising the Mexico move as both necessary and forward-thinking. At its core, this conflict is symbolic of a larger national dilemma. On one side is a nostalgic political vision that promises to revive a version of American manufacturing rooted in the past. On the other side stands a company adapting to a globalized, automated, and tech-driven economy where survival depends on flexibility, innovation, and ruthless efficiency. For the American farmer caught in the middle, the stakes are enormous. Will they support a company making difficult but forward-looking decisions to remain viable? Or will they side with political leaders demanding loyalty at the cost of global competitiveness? In truth, the Deere situation is not just a story about one factory or even one company. It's a glimpse into the future of work, production, and politics in the 21st century. John Deere's future plans represent a bold pivot from its legacy as a traditional farm equipment manufacturer toward becoming a global leader in smart, sustainable, and data-driven agriculture. At the heart of this transformation is the company's investment in automation, artificial intelligence, and electrification, technologies that are reshaping how food is grown, harvested, and managed in the 21st century. Deere is leading the charge in autonomous farming equipment with machines like the fully autonomous 8R and 9RX tractors, capable of operating without human intervention. These tractors use advanced GPS, LiDAR, and camera systems to navigate fields, monitor their surroundings, and make real-time decisions, dramatically reducing the need for manual labor and increasing operational efficiency for farmers. This move toward autonomy is not just about technology for its own sake. It's a direct response to labor shortages, rising input costs, and the need to increase yields to feed a growing global population. Alongside automation, electrification is another major pillar of Deere's strategy. The company has begun rolling out electric versions of its smaller utility tractors and commercial landscaping equipment, reducing emissions and operating costs while aligning with increasing regulatory demands for greener machinery. These machines offer benefits beyond environmental compliance. They run more quietly, require less maintenance, and are better suited for urban and environmentally sensitive areas. Deere is also deeply investing in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Its See and Spray technology, for example, uses computer vision to identify weeds with pinpoint accuracy, enabling selective herbicide application. This innovation significantly cuts down chemical use, which not only reduces environmental impact but also saves farmers money. John Deere's long-term vision also includes robust software platforms that bring all these technologies together. The John Deere Operations Center is a digital farm management hub where users can analyze field data, optimize planting schedules, monitor equipment health, and receive real-time feedback. With this platform, Deere is moving beyond machinery to become a service provider in the data economy, offering insights, predictions, and automation that go far beyond what traditional tractors could do. To support this future, Deere is partnering with tech firms, acquiring AI startups, and investing in satellite and IoT infrastructure, ensuring farmers can stay connected even in the most remote fields. Strategically, John Deere is also rethinking its global manufacturing footprint. While recent moves to expand production in Mexico have stirred political controversy, they are part of a broader strategy to localize production near growth markets like Latin America, where agricultural demand is booming. Mexico offers logistical advantages, cost savings, and faster access to emerging markets in Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia. This expansion is part of a global strategy designed to ensure resilience against supply chain disruptions and better serve diverse regional needs. Importantly, Deere is framing these moves not as offshoring, but as part of a global optimization effort that still keeps the bulk of its high-end manufacturing in the US. Ultimately, John Deere's future is not about returning to the past, it is about anticipating and shaping what comes next. The company is positioning itself at the intersection of agriculture and high-tech, betting that the farm of the future will rely less on diesel engines and manual labor and more on autonomous systems, electrified machinery, and real-time data analytics. This vision may put the company at odds with populist political rhetoric focused on reshoring jobs, but Deere appears committed to a future that values efficiency, precision, and sustainability over nostalgia, through strategic innovation and global expansion. John Deere is preparing not just to survive, but to lead the next era of farming. John Deere is currently navigating a complex and high-stakes moment that reflects the broader tensions facing global manufacturers in a politically volatile and technologically disruptive era. The company, long seen as a cornerstone of American agriculture, is under intense scrutiny for its recent decision to shift part of its manufacturing to Mexico. This move has sparked backlash from populist politicians, particularly Donald Trump, who has publicly accused Deere of abandoning American workers and threatened punitive tariffs. While the political rhetoric has ignited controversy and drawn emotional reactions from rural voters, Deere has stood firm, emphasizing that only a small fraction of its North American production is being relocated and that its flagship products, large tractors, combines, and harvesters, will continue to be built in U.S. factories. At the same time, John Deere is undergoing a massive transformation internally, investing heavily in automation, electrification, and AI-powered software to redefine modern agriculture. Its autonomous tractors, precision spraying systems, and farm management platforms signal a future where machines, not humans, do most of the labor. This long-term shift makes political demands to bring jobs back increasingly out of step with economic and technological realities. Deere is not just moving factories, it is evolving its entire business model to meet the demands of global food production, labor shortages, and environmental pressures. Wall Street has largely supported this strategy, with analysts praising the company's foresight and resilience even as political risk looms. The tension between innovation and nationalism has placed John Deere in the crosshairs of a larger debate. Should American companies prioritize domestic loyalty over global competitiveness? Deere's position suggests that the company sees its future not bound by borders, but defined by data, efficiency, and smart farming. The situation highlights a symbolic crossroads between old manufacturing-era expectations and the realities of an increasingly automated, borderless economy. one where the American farmer and the American voter are being asked to choose between promises of the past and the hard truths of the future. John Deere's business expansion in Mexico is progressing as a key part of its global strategy to enhance competitiveness and better serve growing markets in Latin America. The company recently announced a $55 million investment to establish a new state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Nuevo León, Mexico, expected to be operational by 2026. This plant will focus on producing mini track loaders and mini wheel loaders, marking John Deere's first dedicated facility for construction machinery in the country. This move comes in response to the rapidly expanding construction equipment market in Mexico, which has grown over 75% since 2022, making the region an increasingly important hub for manufacturing and distribution. Despite facing political backlash and threats of steep tariffs from former President Donald Trump due to the relocation of some production from the U.S. to Mexico, Deere remains committed to its plans, emphasizing that this decision is driven by long-term growth prospects, cost efficiencies, and the need to meet rising demand for advanced agricultural and construction machinery in Latin America. Existing facilities in Mexico, combined with the new plant, strategically position John Deere to optimize supply chains, reduce reliance on imports, and offer faster, more localized service to customers in the region. Investor confidence remains strong, as reflected in Deere's robust stock performance, signaling that the market views this expansion as a forward-looking and necessary evolution amid a global manufacturing landscape increasingly shaped by automation, technological innovation, and shifting trade dynamics. John Deere's relationship with former President Donald Trump has been notably contentious, especially after the company announced plans to relocate some production lines to Mexico. In response, Trump publicly condemned the move, labeling it a betrayal of American workers and threatening to impose a punitive 200% tariff on John Deere imports to the U.S. if the relocation proceeded. Deere pushed back, clarifying that less than 5% of its North American production would be affected and that most manufacturing would remain in the United States. The company framed the decision as a strategic effort to optimize global operations and respond to evolving market demands, not as abandoning American jobs. Economists and trade experts warned that Trump's tariff threats could violate trade agreements like USMCA and potentially provoke retaliatory measures from Mexico, which might harm U.S. farmers and increase costs for consumers. This clash highlighted the complex challenges of balancing domestic manufacturing interests, political pressures, and the realities of global supply chains in today's economy. The relationship between John Deere, one of America's most iconic agricultural and construction equipment manufacturers, and former President Donald Trump has become a highly public and symbolic clash that reflects larger tensions in U.S. trade, policy, manufacturing, and political discourse. The controversy began in earnest when John Deere announced in mid-2024 that it would be relocating certain production lines, specifically for mini track loaders and compact construction equipment, from the United States to a new state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Mexico, slated to open by 2026. This decision was primarily driven by economic and strategic considerations. Labor costs in Mexico are roughly 70% lower than in the U.S., supply chains have become increasingly strained, and Deere sought to position itself closer to booming agricultural and construction markets in Latin America. Additionally, Deere is confronting a global manufacturing landscape that is rapidly evolving, with automation and advanced technologies reducing labor needs and forcing companies to optimize production for cost efficiency and market access. However, this business move triggered an immediate and vociferous response from Donald Trump, who publicly denounced the decision as a betrayal of American workers and a direct attack on the country's manufacturing base. Speaking from a rally in Iowa, a key agricultural state, Trump threatened to impose an unprecedented 200% tariff on all John Deere products imported into the U.S. if the company proceeded with its Mexico expansion. His rhetoric framed the issue as a stark political and economic conflict. Companies moving jobs abroad would face severe consequences, reinforcing his broader America First trade stance that championed protecting domestic jobs and industries. John Deere, however, refused to back down or apologize. The company made clear that the Mexico facility